We start a new chapter today, the ascending series of substance. This is well known in Indian philosophy and other philosophies also, that there is an ascending series of substance. But Sri Aurobindo is going into much more detail and explaining many things. And it's extremely important concept, because if it's an ascending series of substance and there is a continuity from top to bottom, then the top can be dragged down into the bottom. A divinization of matter is possible. That's why it's a very important chapter. Because others are saying there is no connection. The ascetics are saying there is no connection between spirit and matter. So you have to go necessarily, compulsorily to spirit. If you want a divine life, you can't have it here. Sri Aurobindo is saying, no, there is a connection. In a sense, the entire life divine is busy establishing this fact, that there is a connection and it's possible to have a divine life on earth. The ascending series of substance. There is a self that is of the essence of matter. There is another inner self of life that fills the other. There is another inner self of mind. There is another inner self of truth knowledge. There is another inner self of bliss. Taittiriya Upanishad. They climb Indra like a ladder. As one mounts peak after peak, there becomes clear the much that has still to be done. Indra brings consciousness of that as the goal. Like a hawk, a kite, he settles on the vessel and upbears it. In his stream of movement, he discovers the rays, for he goes bearing his weapons. He cleaves to the ocean surge of the waters, a great king. He declares the fourth status. Like a mortal purifying his body, like a war horse galloping to the conquest of riches, he pours, calling through all the sheath, and enters these vessels. Rigveda. Rigveda's images are relevant back 5,000 years, so it's not always very easy to penetrate their symbols. Anyway, a very quick look at what he's saying and importance of certain words. There is a self that's of the essence of matter. Matter, gross matter, the essence is substance. Okay? And that can be subtle. And it can be various grades of subtlety. There is another inner self of life that fills the other. So, he's talking of an inner self and it is filling the other. So, in the substance of matter, there is the substance of life. Again, in the substance of life, there is the substance of mind. So, like that Russian doll, famous example, one inside the other, all there. Okay, so this is one way of looking. The other way of looking is that there is sort of ladder-like also sequence. But all this ladder-like sequence, on a ladder the rungs are all different. But this is not like that. Each one is penetrating the other. It is at a higher level yet penetrating the other. Okay? Like rainbow colors. There is a mixture. And then he is specifying also what they are. Okay? Finally, there is the inner self of truth knowledge and there is another inner self of bliss. In other words, they are referring to the 5 sheaths. Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and finally Anandamaya kosha. Very clearly it is there. These 5 are there. The other one, you can understand as you want. It's not easy. But in the first one, he's saying that they are interpenetrating. Now the other one is like a ladder. So it's a slight different image. Both are valid. Because at our level, maybe they are not valid. But beyond the mind, everything is valid. So, we leave that as it is and then we start the text. Okay. If we consider what it is that most represents to us the materiality of matter, we shall see that it is its aspects of solidity, tangibility, increasing resistance, firm response to the touch of sense. Okay? Substance seems more truly material and real in proportion as it presents to us a solid resistance, and by virtue of that resistance, a durability of sensible form on which our consciousness can dwell. In proportion as it is more subtle, less densely resistant, and enduringly seizable by the sense, it appears to us less material. This attitude of our ordinary consciousness towards matter is a symbol of the essential object for which matter has been created. Substance passes into the material status in order that it may present to the consciousness which has to deal with it durable, firmly seizable images on which the mind can rest and base its operations, on which the life can handle with at least a relative surety of permanence in the form upon which it works. Therefore, in the ancient Vedic formula, earth, type of the more solid states of substance, was accepted as a symbolic name of the material principle. Therefore, too, touch or contact is for us the essential basis of sense. All other physical senses, taste, smell, hearing and sight, are based upon a series of more and more subtle and indirect contacts between the percipient and the perceived. Equally, in the Sankhya classification of the 5 elemental states of substance, from ether to earth, we see that their characteristic is a constant progression from the more subtle to the less subtle, so that at the summit we have the subtle vibrations of the ethereal, and at the base the grosser density of the earthly or solid elemental condition. Matter, therefore, is the last stage known to us in the progress of pure substance towards a basis of cosmic relation in which the first word shall be not spirit but form, and form in its utmost possible development of concentration, resistance, durably gross image, mutual impenetrability, the culminating point of distinction, separation and division. This is the intention and character of the material universe. It is the formula of accomplished divisibility. So, fairly simple what he's saying, nothing much to, but we can look at the words because his accuracy of language is very interesting. Each word is so accurate. So we'll have a quick look at that. The first part is very easy, na? If we consider what it is that most represents to us the materiality of matter. Matter is a substance, but what is it that characterizes it? He has given the characteristics, okay? Solidity. We think it is solid, but strangely enough, it's the least solid spiritually. It's just an image. And when you go in higher in consciousness, you see that the solidity of matter is not a fact at all. Even science is telling you that. What is science telling you? Matter is energy. And if you go down to the atomic level, the space between the electron and the, what's this center called? Nucleus. What?
Nucleus.
The nucleus is so large at that level, but if you blow it up to our level, it will be empty space. Huge empty space. So mostly it is empty space. And there is a very interesting video of it is being circulated on YouTube, a German scientist. He's saying, when I am teaching nuclear physics, I feel I am teaching Vedanta. Because Shankara said that long ago, that matter is non-existent. Okay? And there are beautiful passages in Savitri also describing how this solidity is nothing but a emptiness.
Some of the prominent physicians at that time, when it was being discovered, these theories, they were great students of Vedanta.
Yes, of course.
I think it's in the canto The Pursuit of the Unknowable, where he is describing the void and the experience of the void. But this void is not entirely emptiness, but it is Shanti and Shakti or something.
Yeah.
It's not pure emptiness.
It is empty in this sense that it is featureless. There is a difference between featurelessness and sheer emptiness. There can never be an emptiness because nature abhors a vacuum. Even science tells you that. So it can never be an emptiness, but it's a featurelessness. I usually describe it to my students as, take water, okay? A glass of water on the table, static, pure, without any dirt, without any motion. Imagine that glass becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it is so big that you don't see the glass. It has gone to infinity. Up, down, on the side, everywhere. Inside, outside. What do you see? Bring someone who has not participated in the experience and ask him, what are you seeing? He will say, if he had participated in the experiment, he will say, I know it is water. So he would be the Vedantin. It is featureless. But if you bring someone who has not participated in it, he will say it's emptiness. He is a Buddhist. So that's the only difference. Very difficult to distinguish between the two. One is not emptiness and one is sheer emptiness. But sheer emptiness does not exist. Okay. So, now, interestingly, look at the phrases, okay? So, I just point out, we shall see that it is its aspects of solidity, tangibility, touchability, increasing resistance, firm response to the touch of sense. Now look at that. It's not sense of touch. It's touch of sense with an escape. He's not talking of sense. But he's using a very interesting word, touch, almost like a pun.
And sense is with S capital.
Yes, that means all the senses. The essential principle of sense. What is the principle of sense? That which allows you to see something other than yourself. That is sense. So, I and the not I, it allows you to see. It allows you to have a contact with them. That is sense. It can be visual, it can be auditory, it can be olfactory, it can be gustatory, and it can be also, what is it called? Tactile, if you want.
It also comes in the Kena Upanishad, the sense of our sense.
Yes.
When they give all the pairs.
That's right. Yeah. The sense, the sight of our sight is the subtle sight, the principle of sight. The hearing of our hearing is the principle of hearing. Principle.
So Ranganath, I felt when you were talking about the featurelessness which is there, appears as that void, I feel that the word Anantaguna, infinite features, that is not given as much consideration as it should be by Indians because of the the imprint of the Buddhistic thought and all. But what I felt when you were saying that was this, that voidness, that is one of the features among the infinite features, and not that it is pure featurelessness.
It is Buddhism and Mayavada which has spread this idea of featurelessness. Okay? But the Anantaguna and the Saguna and the Nirguna are very common concepts in our Indian philosophy. So it's one aspect, and that's the beauty of Indian philosophy. There is no restriction, and they're saying this is only truth.
So this so-called featurelessness could be just one feature out of the infinite features.
You can,
aspect of that.
You could say that. Okay, so substance now, touch of sense. Yes. So touch, a firm response to the touch of sense. Touch in the sense of contact, not in the sense of touch. Because sense is the, as we defined sense just now, the possibility of a relationship between you and the not you. Okay, so that's a sense. Substance seems more truly material and real in proportion as it presents to us a solid resistance, and by virtue of that resistance, a durability of sensible form on which our consciousness can dwell. Now, look at the word sensible form. Sensible not in the sense of, oh, he's a very sensible person. Not in that sense. Sensible means subject to sense. Okay. So, form which is available to the senses. So, that's a sensible form. Okay. On which our consciousness can dwell. Dwell means it can stay on it and have a relation with it and consider it for long. This is interesting because there is form in matter. There is form in life. There are life forms. Okay. Then there are also mental forms. Then even in the higher planes of consciousness, there are forms. But these forms become more and more nebulous, more and more cloudy, more and more subtle. Okay. We have, in the vital world, you have elves and gnomes. These creatures are there. They are forms. Not only that, apart from that, even your emotions are forms. Okay. Your love has a form, at least it has a color, okay, and hate has a form. All these have colors and forms. So everything is matter ultimately. This you must remember. Everything is matter, but subtle matter. Okay, so he's saying you can dwell, because if the solidity and durability is not there, how will I have relations with the forms in the physical world? Everything which keeps moving, it will be impossible. So that's a purpose. But interestingly, you can see that this durability is relative. Nothing in the physical world is permanently durable. This is a feature. So it lasts for a certain time. Durability of each form in the physical world goes on changing. As we like to say, butterflies last for 1 week. Okay, cats and dogs will last for 10, 15 years. Man will live for 70, 80 years. Himalayas will be maybe for 1 million years. That's all. But nothing is permanent in the physical world. Yet it is durable enough for you to have a relation with them. This is the interesting part. Okay, so a durability of sensible form on which our consciousness can dwell, in proportion as it is more subtle, less densely resistant, and enduringly seizable by the sense. Okay, now you have to be very careful here. In proportion as it is more subtle, less densely resistant, and less dense, enduringly seizable by the sense. He has eliminated the word, otherwise you will get confused. This is Srimdo's style. I am pointing out to you because very often he eliminates verbs, and when he is repeating, he eliminates. So you might get confused here. Suddenly he is bringing in the opposite. Why? But less he is not repeating. Okay? So you can see clearly. Where is it gone? Yeah. In proportion as it is more subtle, less densely resistant, and less enduringly seizable by the sense, it appears to us less material. Okay? So this attitude of our ordinary consciousness, one good example of this is the cloud. Okay? It's less material because you can't seize it, it goes on changing form. Okay, so. But those who can see subtle things, they will be able to see emotions also, which have got variable forms, as well as mental thoughts also have forms, but they are not seizable because they go on changing and they are more nebulous. It's interesting because one day Mother has described Jugulda's power of mind, okay? And he said he's got a very powerful mind because actually he was playing Perseus the Deliverer on the stage. Way back in 1952 or 53, okay, we used to have drama on the 1st of December. So he was playing Perseus the Deliverer. And his mind, when he was thinking and reciting those lines, his thoughts were so clear that they came out well formed. So Mother had commented on that. So the more nebulous and confused your thinking, your thoughts will have nebulous forms. But if you have got clear thinking, they will come out with clear. And interesting, which Mother says that even about sound, she says the same thing. She says when someone comes in front of me and is speaking confusedly, I can't understand what he's saying towards the end. And she says that if they are clear in their mind and they are speaking sensible things, I can hear what they are saying. Hearing, not seeing. Okay? So, this is important. In proportion as the more that we read. This attitude of our ordinary consciousness towards matter is a symbol of the essential object for which matter has been created. Matter has been created for durability of forms and separation of forms. Substance passes into the material status in order that it may present to the consciousness which has to deal with it durable, firmly seizable images on which mind can rest and base its operations, and which the life can handle with at least a relative surety of permanence in the form upon which it works. So, this includes man and also animal. They have to deal with fixed forms, so that if there is no fixed form, there is no continuity, and it becomes a meaningless thing. If you apply that, if you think of the opposite, where the forms are going on moving, you end up with ridiculous situations. Okay? If you ask someone, what have you eaten today? He can't say, because the thing has changed. A dog will hide its bone somewhere, and that bone will disappear next day. So it becomes very, very, practically very difficult. So durability of form has to be there. That's why, ridiculous examples, but that shows you how durability of form is so necessary. Okay? Therefore, in the ancient Vedic formula, earth, type of the more solid states of substance, was accepted as the symbolic name for the material principle. Therefore, too, touch or contact is for us the essential basis of sense. All other physical senses, taste, smell, hearing, sight, are based upon a series of more and more subtle and direct, indirect contacts between the percipient and the perceived. There you are, the percipient and that which is perceived. At a certain level of consciousness, percipient and perceived become the same, cosmic consciousness. But here in the physical world, they are separate. Okay? So, and he has not gone into great detail here, but he has gone into great detail earlier in another chapter. Ether corresponds to sound. Then next is air, corresponds to touch. You can see also that air, you can see. But mind you, it is not ether, air, fire, water, earth. They are only representative states of that one substance. And what is that one substance? Satchidananda. Okay? So, and which is one. So,
and not even this ether, air, fire which we see. These names, these things, they represent best that.
They represent, exactly, they are images. Actually, ether, air, fire, water are all material only. They are material. Water is material. Air also is material. It can be solidified. So, it's only names. Srimanta says symbolically, in an earlier chapter he has that. So, ether corresponds to sound. That's why the first creative word is Om. That's right. Okay. Vibrations. Then you come to air, touch corresponds to it. Then you come to fire, sight. Then you come to water, taste. And you come to earth, finally it becomes
Smell.
smell. That's right. Okay.
Can you repeat that? Ether is?
It is Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha.
Yeah, that's right.
So correspondingly, ether, air, fire, water, earth.
These are representative names for the subtlety of their substance. Many children get, what is the substance that you're talking about? Okay. So it is really Satchidananda. Okay. So, we continue. Therefore, too, touch or contact is for us the essential base of sense. Okay? Other physical senses, of that we read. Equally, in the Sankhya classification of the 5 elemental states of substance, from ether to earth, we see that their characteristic is a constant progression from the more subtle to the less subtle, so that at the summit, we have the subtle vibrations of the ethereal, and at the base, the grosser density of the earthly or solid elemental condition. I think the word elemental here is referring to the elements. In science, you refer to the elements, na? Oxygen, hydrogen, gold, silver, these are all elements. Elemental states. Or it could also mean,
it's the 5 elements, like ethereal, then aerial, then
solid elemental condition.
fiery, liquid, and solid.
So, matter therefore is the last stage known to us in the progress of pure substance towards the basis of cosmic relation, in which the first word shall be not spirit but form, and form in its utmost possible development of concentration, resistance, durably gross image, mutual impenetrability, the culminating point of distinction, separation and division. I want to stop here because I want to point out one word which is so important here. Matter therefore is the last stage known to us. Is there a stage which is below matter? There is. The inconscient is even below matter. That's why he's saying known to us. We can't see the inconscient. See how important that word is.
Aurobindo went down into it. He has recorded it in some of his poems.
Mother also. Yeah. In fact, Mother went down into the inconscient, stifling and narrow and
hard
and she was shot up from there into the supramental world, vibrating with the seeds of supermind. In other words, there is a connection between the two.
Actually, the word matter, na? I mean, I looked it up. It comes from the matri of Sanskrit, meaning mother. So, matrix, all these 4 words are related. And when the inconscient starts evolving, and basically, I mean, the subtle physical, when it interacts with the inconscient and something is produced, that thing is called matter. And in there, everything evolves.
Yeah. What you're saying is interesting because in the Vedas they say, heaven is our father and the earth is our mother.
And in Savitri, Sri Aurobindo has called inconscient as the dark mother at 1 or 2.
Yeah. Today in the morning also we were discussing the inconscience, okay? Somehow they were saying that the inconscient also can be made light. But the inconscient, just as the higher and the lower, they are the only 2 permanent things. The superconscient is permanent. Inconscient also is permanent. But then when Sri Aurobindo says about, this is something that can be really expanded and talked about. When a yogi is experiencing the light, and suppose he also clears his subconscious, what's he doing? He is expanding the range of his consciousness upwards but also downwards. But that doesn't mean to say that the inconscient is disappearing for him. The inconscient will always remain. It will keep going down, 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 perhaps for the supramental race. But it is permanent. We were discussing that in the morning today, remember? So, we come back to our... Matter, therefore, is the last stage known to us. That known to us is so important. In the progress of pure substance towards the basis of cosmic relation, in which the first word shall be not spirit but form. And form in its utmost possible development of concentration, resistance, durably gross image, mutual impenetrability, culminating point of distinction, separation and division. This is very interesting what he is saying here because there is complete separation at the material level. Each atom has become separate and each one does not know the other. But as you keep rising higher and higher in consciousness, fusion and mixture is possible. 2 glasses of water can mix. 2 consciousnesses can mix. Okay? That's why identification becomes possible at the higher levels. At this level, not possible. But consciousness can mix with another consciousness. Identification becomes possible. Okay? So, culminating point of distinction, separation and division. This is the intention and character of the material universe. It is a formula of accomplished divisibility. Divisibility taken to its extreme limit. Accomplished is using the word.
And why he's saying accomplished is because the reality is indivisible,
Yeah.
fundamentally.
Another interesting thing, if you go below matter into the inconscient, is there a division?
Below matter into the inconscient. There is perfect division there.
I don't think so.
There is no division. It becomes again a oneness of darkness. Achha, I'll give you an image and then you will see how it is. We all know that there is something called high definition in TV. No? So, the smaller the pixel, the clearer the image. Now, is it possible to make the pixel so small that there is no pixel at all? So divisibility taken to its extreme level becomes uniformity. No? So at the highest level, oneness. At the lowest level, also oneness.
And also he says about divisibility that, there is a word called infinitesimal in calculus.
That's right.
So even if you divide it infinitely, there is no point at which you can say that now it is complete, because the possibility of that is limitless.
Yes.
Because, that thing by its nature is infinite.
Yes. In fact, he discusses this in the Life Divine in another place also, that when you go on dividing, do you come to utter indivisibility? Divisibility? No, he says you come back to the same thing again. He says that.
Can we say here that the purpose of material world is for manifestation, and to establish relation and manifestation, divisibility is necessary.
Yes,
So that
absolutely.
is the main purpose of the material world.
Absolutely. Otherwise, relations are not possible. If there is a oneness, what relation is there? And relation is necessary for development. If there is nobody else, where is the opportunity of development? That's right. So, divisibility. We go to the second paragraph. I'll read the whole thing. And if there is, as there must be in the nature of things, an ascending series in the scale of substance from matter to spirit, it must be marked by progressive diminution of these capacities, most characteristic of the physical principle, and a progressive increase of the opposite characteristics, which will lead us to the formula of pure spiritual self-extension. This is to say that they must be marked by less and less bondage to the form, more and more subtlety and flexibility of substance and force, more and more interfusion, interpenetration, power of assimilation, power of interchange, power of variation, transmutation, unification. Drawing away from durability of form, we draw towards eternity of essence. Drawing away from our poise in the persistent separation and resistance of physical matter, we draw near to the highest divine poise in the infinity, unity, indivisibility of spirit. Between gross substance and pure spirit substance, note, this must be the fundamental antinomy. In matter, chit or conscious force masses itself more and more to resist and stand out against other masses of the same conscious force. In substance of spirit, pure consciousness images itself freely in its sense of itself, with an essential indivisibility and a constant unifying interchange as the basic formula even of the most diversifying play of its own force. Between these two poles, there is the possibility of an infinite gradation. That quite a paragraph. But note that last line, the last sentence. Between these two poles, spirit and matter, there is a possibility of an infinite gradation. You can divide into any number you want. because it's not like a staircase, but a ramp. So you can divide anywhere you want. And wherever you divide, there will always be characteristics to that one particular plane which change the next plane, which change the next plane. This is something that I go on telling the students, that all these worlds, the laws operating there, the characteristics operating there are different from the other. Just like in different countries, you have different laws. Okay. I gave them the example of usually we go on the we drive on the left in India. There they drive on the right. Okay, you can't mix up the two. So the laws of the physical world are not the laws of the vital world, are not the laws of the mental world. Least of all, laws of the spirit. In fact, there are no laws in the spirit at all. Total freedom. So we come back to and try to make sense of what he's saying here. The first part is easy. And if there is, as there must be in the nature of things, an ascending series in the scale of substance from matter to spirit, it must be marked by a progressive diminution of these capacities. Capacities that he has spoken about earlier, you remember? Tangibility, solidity, increasing resistance, firm resistance to touch of sense. These things become less and less, he's saying. Okay? They must be marked by a progressive diminution of these capacities, most characteristics of the physical principle, and a progressive increase of the opposite characteristics, which will lead us to the formula of, finally, pure spiritual self-extension. Pure spiritual self-extension. Self-extension, infinite, but it is pure. The word pure is very interesting, because take a glass of water. If it is pure, what defines purity? Take any point, it's the same. No mixture. That is pure. Huh? So, pure self-extension. It becomes infinite at the highest level spirit, but anywhere it is the same. In other words, oneness. No duality, no multiplicity. So these are all involved in each other. So, pure spiritual self-extension. This is to say that they must be marked by less and less bondage to the form. The form can become more and more flexible. More and more subtlety and flexibility of substance and force. Now, he is introducing also force. Flexibility of substance as well as force. Force also can be flexible. Okay. More and more subtlety and flexibility of substance and force. More and more interfusion, interpenetration, power of assimilation, power of interchange, power of variation, transmutation, unification. Look at each word, because we try to distinguish between each word, because Srimadaras use words used uselessly, okay? So, interfusion, interpenetration. What's the difference? Interfusion. A is mixing with B and becoming something else. Okay? Interpenetration. A is going into B but remaining A. Okay? So, interpenetration. Power of assimilation. A is swallowing B or B is swallowing A. Assimilating. When you are eating food, it becomes part of your body. Your body has assimilated the food. So, either A or B disappears. So how accurate Srimadaras is with his words. It's really fascinating to see how he's using the words. No? Okay, then interfusion, interpenetration, power of assimilation, power of interchange. Now tell me, what's the difference between power of interchange and interfusion? Power of interchange, A is giving something to B and B is giving something to A. But remaining A and B separately. So many different types of he is going into, okay? Power of interchange, power of variation. A itself can keep changing, B itself can keep changing. Okay, then next one. Power of variation, transmutation. Okay. So what, Anmol, how will you distinguish between power of variation and transmutation?
Transmutation, I'm thinking that it just becomes something else, totally different.
But variation also means that.
Variation means that, but variation,
The degree is
the whole character does not change. Transmute means it has become something else altogether.
Yes, I would think so.
change in degree of.
Yeah, degree. Yeah. Variation is less fixed. No? Variation is less fixed. But transmutation, very clear, something else.
The word trans means across. So it
Yeah.
has gone across to something else.
That's right. So, how subtle he has used all the words. Finally, unification. A can become B at the highest level. That's the power of identification with something. Okay? And that power of identification can be there at all levels. It's not only, even at the vital world is possible, because as we said just now, 2 glasses of water can mix. So, it can become. You remember mother's experience of identification with the cherry tree in Japan? So, when I read that the first time, I used to think that it's a poetic image. And now the sap of the tree is flowing in my veins, she says. But I thought it's a poetic image. No. The essence of that is going into the essence of this. I realized that when I read about a chap called Rocky, okay? And he was there in the Findhorn Garden. And he had identified himself with the tree in which he was. He had the experience of nature, okay? It's an interesting incident. He was walking in London, and London was cold, okay, that time in winter. He's walking, suddenly he felt that it's warm all around him. And he knew that there is a presence around him. So he wondered what it was. Then that presence asked him, "Are you not afraid of me?" It was nature. Nature's presence. And he says, "Are you not afraid of me?" And he says, "No, why should I be afraid of you?" He says, "Why? In the West, everybody is afraid of me because they picture nature as a goat, nah? With a goat head. They picture it that way because paganism, the idea of pagan. Yeah. So he said, "No, I'm not afraid of you." He says, "Okay, then we can proceed." Then for a long time he had the experience of unification with the spirit of nature. He goes and sits against a tree, and he identifies himself with the tree. So that's when I realized that mother's identification are poetry. It's a real experience at the subtle world. And then he had a very interesting experience because he had identified himself with nature. He could see elves. And one little elf comes running to him and he's dancing. These creatures are very playful. So he's dancing, and I mention all this because of unification. Okay. So he's dancing and he says, Rock says hello to him, not in words, but in consciousness. He says hello. Then that little elf is surprised and says, "Who is calling me?" He looks here and there. Then he says, "Well, hello, I called you." He says, "But human beings can't see us. How are you seeing me? Are you really seeing me?" He says, "Yes." So he tests him. He says, "Now tell me what I'm doing." He lifts his hand, this little elf. So he says, "You are lifting up your right hand." He says, "Yes, you really can see me." So this experience shows that you can identify with nature. It's a very interesting series. In fact, it's available on the internet. Findhorn Garden. Okay. They are also a collectivity like Aurobindo, and they have an exchange also with Aurobindo. Okay. So unification with nature and identification with something is possible. That is how Mother used to also but also change the consciousness of her sadhaks. She used to go every day at night, she used to enter into each sadhak and see what he needs to do. She used to identify herself with the person. Now she knows the problem of that person. Now that problem is her problem and she can solve it. So that's how she used to help everybody. So unification, very important what he's saying.
And another, the difference between interfusion and unification? What I felt was that in interfusion, it's like A and B mixing, so it becomes A plus B, okay? But in unification, that one, the one and only Brahman, or whatever it is, the concept of oneness, there is no sum.
There is no A, no B.
Minus nothing, it's just that one. You merge into that one thing which is there, which alone is.
That's right.
That's what I feel.
Because A and B are characteristics. Yeah. So no characteristics there at all.
It's the Purnam basically.
Yeah.
You become one with that.
That's right. Okay. So, drawing away from durability of form, we draw towards eternity of essence. So, form is solidified substance. When that becomes subtle, it becomes only the essence of things. Okay. Drawing away from our poise in the persistent separation and resistance of physical matter, we draw near to the highest divine poise in the infinity, unity, and indivisibility of spirit. So, indivisible spirit, oneness. Between gross substance and pure spirit, by the way, even when you make your mind silent and go to the higher mind level, the experience of oneness can come. Okay? It comes in degrees. At the highest level, total oneness, but even at the higher mind level, you can experience oneness. So between gross substance and pure spirit substance, this must be the fundamental antinomy. Subtlest, grossest. Formless, form. Okay? In matter, chit or conscious force masses itself more and more to resist and stand out against other masses of the same conscious force. In other words, separation and multiplicity. This will cause multiplicity. It masses itself and resists and stand out against other masses of same consciousness. It becomes divided. Okay? And what is getting divided? Conscious force and you can say everything, Satchidananda, all of it, getting separated. In substance of spirit, pure consciousness images itself freely in its sense of itself with an essential indivisibility and a constant unifying interchange as the basic formula even of the most diversifying play of its own force. Between these two poles, there is a possibility of an infinite gradation. Let's look at that last but one phrase. In substance of spirit, pure consciousness images itself freely in its sense of itself with an essential indivisibility and a constant unifying interchange as a basic formula, even of the most diversifying play of its own force. I think he is referring to the triple status of the supermind, I think, because it has the possibility of creating many, and yet there is a oneness also. So, the triple status of supermind, the first status is oneness. The second status is, if you think of it as a sea, the waves start forming there. The multiplicity starts at the second level. At the third level, the multiplicity is more important than the oneness. Or to put it this way, first status of supermind, only a silent sea. And the sea, no waves, no change, nothing. Absolutely oneness. But it contains the possibility of forms. Above the supermind is the Satchidananda, which does not have the power of manifestation. Manifestation, it relegates its power of manifestation to the supermind. So in the supermind, power of manifestation is there, but the first one is oneness, and that's the difference between the first status of supermind and Satchidananda. Satchidananda will not manifest itself, but supermind will manifest itself, but the first aspect is oneness. Second one, the waves start forming. Okay? But the wave, if you experience that consciousness, the second status of consciousness in the supermind, you will feel that you are one with everything, but you are conscious of your individuality. But the individuality is less important than the oneness. In this third status of supermind, the individuality is more important than the oneness. The wave becomes more prominently formed.
Then, in all the three status, the principle of oneness is there.
It's only at the overmind level that the principle of multiplicity starts very fundamentally. Okay? So I think he is talking of that because
Oneness is there throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one unifying thread is there throughout. Even
Yeah.
below the supermind, what is it called? Na? The Ekameva Dvitiyam Brahma.
Yeah.
So that is there everywhere, which is a unifying factor for the entire thing.
But supermind manifests.
Yes.
It's the manifesting.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
actually if you,
The sense of appearance of divisibility.
yeah,
Yeah, but you are in the oneness consciousness. At the same time manifesting it in.
you can think of it in this way also, that oneness and multiplicity are always together,
Yes.
but at the highest level, oneness is prominent, multiplicity is hiding in it. At the lowest level, multiplicity is the prominent one, oneness is hiding in it. And this oneness and multiplicity, you can exchange the words and say Purusha Prakriti. It's interesting.
Bhatta, for example, he gives the example of the necklace and the thread. So he says, I am the thread which is binding the whole necklace together.
Yeah.
Sutre Manigana Iva.
Actually, Srimad has commented on that also in the essay, okay? Because the image given is, you can see in many ways. So
It's an old image.
Yeah.
So.
they are opposite to each other. Consciousness and force also are always inversely proportional to each other. Look at matter. Force is prominent. If you go down to the atomic level, force is there. But consciousness does not seem to be there. You rise, life, mind, you go to higher mind, consciousness is full, but immutability is there, no force. Force is there, but held back. So they are inversely proportional to each other. So Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and force are always there together, but in less
In the
proportions.
supermind, they're congruent.
They are, yeah, they become one. Supermind, yeah.
Yes.
Supermind, consciousness and force become one. They are equal to each other and they support each other.
They are known as two aspects of the same entity,
Yeah.
not as separate.
Right.
That's the Ardhanarishwara images that we see in our temples. That's the symbol. Okay? So I think that's what he's saying here. Because the language, let's look at that carefully again. In matter, Chit or conscious force masses itself more and more to resist and stand out against other masses of the same conscious force. This is very easy to understand. Okay? Now in other one, because he put a semicolon there, in substance of spirit, pure consciousness images itself freely in its sense of itself with an essential indivisibility and a constant unifying interchange as the basic formula even of the most diversifying play of its own force. Diversifying play. Multiplicity is there, but yet unity also is there. He is using very complex words. Diversifying play. Does it not suggest multiplicity?
Yes.
And that's why he is talking of the supermind. The supermind with the possibility of oneness, but also possibility of multiplicity.
Actually, in the first part of this sentence, again and again, it's coming to me that these two words, mass and conscious force. So, if we take conscious force as consciousness and consciousness as energy, then what they teach in chemistry these days, so when they go down to that level, so they basically say there's two things, charge and mass. So, the charge could be the energy part, which could be the consciousness force, and the mass could be what they define.
Absolutely.
So, that way we can relate
Yeah.
that concept
Yeah.
to what he's saying here.
They use different words. They use even
Charge can also
antimatter.
be vibration.
Pardon?
Charge is
Vibration.
Charge is energy, and energy means
Vibration, exactly.
First part of the sentence is
And
very
interestingly, they don't
Yeah.
say a third thing. दो ही चीजें बोलते हैं. Charge उसका unit coulomb, mass उसका unit gram. Though it's very very small.
I think the first part of the sentence is quite clear. He's talking of matter that the force, different forces are there and they're separate and they resist and fight
Yes,
with each other.
that's right.
clear.
But in the other one,
That is more
little complicated. But that's it's little complicated.
What I
Yeah.
understand is probably he's talking of, as you said, super consciousness, where though the diversifying is there, but still they're fully conscious that they are the same and they keep intermixing with each other, they can change with each other, and there's no division.
That's why I'm saying there's a whole chapter on it. Triple status of supermind. It has got the possibility of, it starts from the oneness, but it's got inherently in it, just like the seed. The seed is one. If you cut up a seed or blow it up, you will not see leaves and flowers and trees in it, twigs. But it has got the capacity to produce this. It's that oneness which has the power of the many in it. So that's what he's saying.